lucky enough to be involved with the BlackSticks men at the moment. Obviously, the world's changed a little bit in that sense. So the intention was to go to the Tokyo Olympics with the BlackSticks men as one of the assistant coaches, which I was really looking forward to. So I enjoyed working with the team through the Pro League in New Zealand, and obviously in the preparation. So that was really good. But things are on hold a little bit at the moment as we all just try and understand what the future looks like. So I've been enjoying that to date, and probably the only other little piece that I'm doing is my Southern Premier Reserves team. Although I'm not a coach, but again, when we get back together, I'm looking forward to working with that group of guys, because that's the fun side of hockey for me, just working with those guys and playing more so than coaching. But that's good fun too.
Cool. Hey, I know that transition you've been making sort of over a period of years now, but what lessons have you learned going from a player to a coach?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think I've learned how hard coaches work. I think I was fortunate to be the manager of the men's team that went to the Rio Olympics, and also had an involvement in the coaching side of things, just focusing on the defence. And you get an appreciation, working alongside at that time was Colin Batch, Bryce Collins, and Greg Nicol, just the amount of hours that they put into things. And I think, as a player and as a previous captain, I think I had appreciated that, but probably not to the extent that I saw firsthand. So I think when you start to see the energy and the effort that goes into coaching, it opens your eyes a little bit. And even the things I've been involved with, the Auckland under-18s and working with John O'Brooker, it has been eye-opening. Just the amount of stuff you have to manage as a player. You're kind of just thinking about managing yourself. And sure, as a senior player, you're thinking about other players in the team, but as a coach, all of a sudden you're having to think, strategize, work with different challenges that individual players have across, whether it's 16 or 25 in a national squad, whatever it might be. But I think that's probably one of the more eye-opening or challenging pieces, that when you transition from player to coach, I'm not sure that you do fully appreciate it. I think the other part for me is had to be really conscious. I know a lot of the players say in the New Zealand setup that I played with myself. So I'm really mindful of that. And I don't think it's a bad thing at all. It is what it is. And as long as I'm really respectful about that relationship, then, I don't have a concern about it. But I think that it is really important to make sure that, that I'm respectful. And that to me is just, listening and working alongside guys, as opposed to just coming in and doing things your own way, which is certainly not the right approach.
Cool. And sort of in a team environment, do you think when you go back in as you have, what's the sort of the spot do you think that you can add the most value as a former player, a former international player going into an environment?
I think there's probably a few things you can add. Like, certainly one element that I'm really enjoying working with BlackSticks men is just to get really specific and really detailed around the defensive side of things. That's something that I'm really enjoying. I think it's quite a what I would describe as a specific job role in that sense, and that's something that that I am really enjoying. I'm a stats geek defender by heart. I'm proud to say that, no problem. So that side of things is really good, and I think that that's something that I'm enjoying. I think I think being so fresh, so to speak, between player and then coaching at a assistant level, the national team, you are quite, relevant. And I think, just in terms of, how close you were to ideas previously. So I think that's probably quite helpful. But I think is also in your memory is all the successes and all the failures that you've had. So what has worked for you and what has not worked for you. And as long as, again, you're really mindful how you're sharing those, I think that you can be really effective with that. So, my view is only one view, but because it is so recent, you can actually be quite effective, I think, at sharing some of the successes and some of the failures that you've had as a player, or as a captain, or as a senior player, or as a playing group, when you've tried things and maybe they've failed in recent memory. So I think that can be useful if, again, there's no guarantees, but if you use it in the right way, I think it can work.
Cool. Things have moved, as you say, in international hockey. I mean, I remember the time we were in EPO and we were making substitutions, and the defence, I was told not to substitute, and only to substitute the midfielders and the strikers. And obviously today, at international level, everyone gets rotated. What's your feeling on that around defenders and being rotated in and out of the defence at sort of much more regular intervals than before?
Well, look, I think it's a good thing. I think it just is an indication of how the game's changed again. I think that's really great. I think the game, it's awesome if the game continues to grow and change and flex and all those sorts of things. Now, I don't think anyone's naive enough to know to agree that every change is going to be beneficial. They'll get some things wrong, and that's fine. But I think it's a really good thing. I think there is a balance, regardless of position. Probably a balance in if you're after results, right? And you need to be really conscious of that. But if you're after results, I think you can make a good argument to give your world class or best players more time. Now, more time might be 2 more minutes a game, like, the amount of rotations a striker makes or whatever. And that might reflect more minutes in a defensive side of things, and it might reflect even more minutes in a goalkeeping side of things. But if you're consciously chasing results, then I think that's the decision you might make. And then on the other side of it, if you're not, if you're chasing, growth and improvement and fun and enjoyment or whatever it might be, then actually you might make the opposite decision. And that could be like the tournament you're referencing, like Aslan Shah. They're really great development tournaments. And I was always a believer where possible that, your players that maybe aren't getting as many minutes, it's actually making sure they get big minutes, because learning to play big minutes is actually a different challenge to stepping in and playing 10 minutes a half, where maybe you just trying to do your role and keep it simple, and you need to play a bit more. So you need to be able to, I think, just be conscious as a coach when you're doing those things. But, I think it's a great thing that there's rotations and the game keeps changing.
Yeah. I guess my concern is that that younger coaches or lower level coaches, club coaches, representative coaches see the rotations at the international level and think, well, that's something we need to do. And like you say, the goals are different. So in one case, there's a development goal. And if you want to improve a young player, then sometimes touches and time are more important than, the result. So you've got to find that balance. And that's what worries me, is that I see young teams and young players playing for 3 minutes, not touching the ball, coming off, and, frustrated with their level of, I guess, growth. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a difficult one to try and find that balance, right? Like even at the top level, I think you'd find strikers coming off being grumpy that, maybe you go through a period of some minutes and you haven't touched the ball much and they don't feel like they're contributing.
Yeah.
So, I think if they have clarity around what their role is, then I think that's one thing that's really important. And then, like you touched on, I think that the consciousness of your decisions is really important. So are we seeking development in a player, and does everyone understand that, the player and the team? And that's why we've made this decision to rotate less or more, or whatever the decision might be. But I think if you're really conscious about that, then it can be a really, a powerful thing. And look, it does depend on, where the team's at too. Like some teams may be able to, as a collective, manage a lot of rotations and it doesn't impact their performance so much. And others, actually might need to be able to learn that a little bit. So again, as a coach, I think if you're seeking to be able to do that as an outcome, rotate more and give equal minutes as an example, then I think, being able to live with a couple of poor performances is probably quite important too.
Yeah, sure. Hey, you touched on statistics before, and a lot of codes, and especially the professional codes, are spending more and more resource, have more and more personnel involved in it. Where do you think hockey's in on that spectrum at the top level at the moment?
Developing, I think, is what I would suggest. So we don't have the same amount of resources that an English Premier League team would, an All Blacks team would in our context. But I think that what you do find in hockey is really incredibly hard-working people and quite a lot of innovation, because you tend to do things off the smell of an oily rag, which I think is pretty typical, right, when you're honest about it, whether it's in regions or whether it's at a national level. It kind of tends to happen. So what I think that drives quite often is innovation. And in some ways, hockey has been really, really innovative in the way it's used video technology. I think it's actually a pretty fast adopter in that sense. I think in terms of stats, probably not so much. And actually, look, I'm no expert, but one thing I think that's driven fast development in some of those bigger sports is the likes of the week-to-week gaming type of apps, So I'm playing a game against my mates, and we get different points each week for my team that I've selected. So that actually drives stats in a sense. And you've seen a little bit of that on the fringes of hockey, but I think that's probably been helpful to some of those other sports, alongside, just clearly being a more professional outfit, and that brings a degree of money, different types of resources, different types of asks on players and those sorts of things. So therefore drives that push towards, say, data and stats and what have you.
Cool. Hey, sort of the last thing is to say, I know you're a guy who likes to learn and be a continuous learner. So has there been a movie or a TV series to do with sport, or a book that you've read recently that's had a bit of an influence on your thinking?
No, probably not recently. Like, certainly observing Rick Charlesworth from, relatively close distance was really interesting, right? And clearly, hugely successful coach. And I think certainly got me thinking reading his book. And I think that's a really good thing. So, he had some ideas that he was incredibly passionate about, and actually some of them I think are great, and, like the development of young players, and, that idea of actually, spreading the minutes and not having, so much focus on starting 11, and some things like that, which he talks about in his book. I think that they're really great ideas, but more than anything, I think what I probably took away from that was just don't be afraid to innovate, and be really conscious and be brave around some things. Be okay doing things in your own way. And look, I'll be honest, by personality, that's probably not me. I'm probably actually way down the other scale as being really conservative and safe and all those things. But I'm relatively conscious of that. So, I'm okay taking some risks and getting it wrong and failing and losing and all those sorts of things. But admittedly, if you put me in a playing shirt, I'm probably the opposite of all those things. So I think, probably not of recent times, but that was a book which for me just got me thinking about different ways to do things and different, thought processes.
Yeah, well, you probably knew he was here last year and did some work with us, and a lot of value for a lot of people. I think he's still a real continuous learner. In fact, you probably can't ever have a coffee or go to dinner with him without him quizzing the people that take him to dinner more than we get to quiz him. So a really neat guy. And I think when I watched Allison's video last week, it proved to me that he's definitely been one of a kind in the whole coaching fraternity in world sport, not just the hockey guys. So he's been ahead of it. I've got a few books that I can share with you. He left me his whole suite of about 6 or 7 different ones. So anytime you're ready after lockdown, I'll share them with you.
Yeah, sounds good.
Hey, thanks, Dean. Thank you for all that you do for Southern. Thank you for what you did for Auckland Hockey when you were a player, and you're coaching with Jono and the under-18s in the last few years. And we look forward to watching your career progress as a coach, and all the very best in your build up to Tokyo.
Sounds good. Thanks, man.
Okay, cheers.